So think of a baby giraffe just learning how to walk. It's very lanky. Hello English learners. In today's video, we will talk about ways to describe a person's appearance. So we'll talk about skin color. We'll talk about hair texture, hair color as well. We'll talk about body type and ways to describe a person's facial features. So if that sort of topic interests you, keep watching. So first we're going to talk about skin color, and we're going to start with the lightest skin color. So there are two words that we use to describe people that are very light, and it can be pale or fair. This just means you have very light skin. Fair is a more neutral term to describe someone who is very light. Pale can sometimes come off a little rude because if you call someone pale, it could mean that they are light, but sometimes it just means that they look a little sick. You know, when you're sick, your skin gets a little bit lighter. We often say that you look a little pale. So the best term and the most polite term would be fair. Next, we have what we call olive tone skin. And this is kind of a medium tone, right? It's a little bit darker than fair, but it's not the darkest skin tone. Next, we have tanned, or what I like to call sun-kissed skin. And this really isn't a skin tone, but it's what happens to your skin when you go out in the sun. You might get a little bit darker, or you might tan, or become sun-kissed. People who live in warmer climates might always have that tan, sun-kissed skin. And I'd just like to note, when we are talking about skin color, we are not talking about race, because we all know that no matter what race you are, you can come in a variety of skin tones. So I like to separate race from what I'm describing, which is just the color of your skin. And then we can have an ebony complexion, and that is a deep brown color. You can describe my skin as an ebony complexion, or maybe even darker than me can also be ebony. Next, we have the terms light-skinned and dark-skinned, and these are definitely terms that we use to describe skin color. But just know that people have different definitions or ideas of what is considered light and what is considered dark. Take, for example, these two pictures. If you compare these two people here, you can see one has light skin and one has dark skin. So you might call the lighter person light-skinned and the darker person dark-skinned, right? But if you look at this picture, we have two people again, one with light skin and one with dark skin. Even though we use these terms to describe people's skin color, just know that they are often used comparatively, and also different people might have different ideas of what a light-skinned person is and what a dark-skinned person is. And now we are going to describe hair texture, starting with straight hair. Just means you don't have any bend or curls in your hair. And then we have wavy hair, right? Kind of reminds you of an ocean wave. It has a slight bend to it. And then we have curly hair. It has many different bends and twists to it. Next we have Afro-Textured hair, and this type of hair is curly as well, except the curls are a little bit smaller and a little bit tighter. Another term we use to describe this hair texture is kinky. Then we have this term fine. It describes the thickness, the diameter of your hair, right? So if you have very fine hair, it means that the individual strands are very thin. And then we have coarse hair. This is the opposite of having fine hair. It means that the diameter of your hair is very thick. You have thick strands if you have coarse hair. And next we have frizzy hair, and this just describes hair that is not very smooth or defined. Usually curly hair can get pretty frizzy, but you can also find people with straighter hair textures that can get frizzy. Next we have locks. This isn't really a hair texture, but more of a hairstyle. So I have locks. It's just hair that has been twisted or knotted together. And as you can see, locks come in all different sizes. The woman in the picture has much smaller locks than mine, but it's the same concept. It's just hair that has been knotted together. Okay, so next we're going to talk about hair color. And we're going to start with blonde. And as you can see, we have blonde with just a D on the end, and then blonde with an E on the end. We use blonde with an E on the end to talk about women. We call women who have blonde hair blondes with an E. A platinum blonde person is a person who has blonde hair, but it's very light in color. Usually we see children who have platinum blonde hair. I don't see it too much naturally on adults. Next we have a strawberry blonde. This describes blonde hair that has a kind of reddish tone to it. And then we have a dirty blonde. A dirty blonde person has sort of brownish colored roots, and then you see more of the actual blonde hair towards the middle and the ends. And next we have brunette. A brunette has darker hair, a dark brown color to be specific. And we use the B-R-U-N-E-T spelling to refer to men who are brunette, and then the one with the extra T and the E to talk about women who are brunette. Next we have red hair. This describes hair that is red. And then you can even use the term black to describe hair color. And this just is hair that appears to be black. Of course, not too many people actually have jet black hair, but you can still call very, very dark hair that looks black, black. And then we have the terms gray or silver. And this describes hair that looks gray or silver. Usually calling someone's hair silver is a little bit more polite. Not that calling someone's hair gray is impolite, but it just sounds a bit nicer to say silver. And then of course we have white hair, hair that appears to be white. And then we have what we call salt and pepper hair, which is hair that is both white or gray mixed with some black or a darker color. Next, we're going to talk about body types. And in America, like in many other countries, this is often a very sensitive topic. It's important to describe people's body types using the correct or the most polite term, unless you intend to insult that person. First, we are going to describe thin body types. And the first two terms are polite, and some people might find as a compliment. You can call a thin person slim or slender. This means they are thin, but in an attractive way. And then we have the term skinny. I tend to think of this as a neutral term. Some people might take offense to it if you call them skinny, but this is another term that you use to describe someone who is thin. If you don't want to insult someone, I would recommend calling them either slim or slender. Then we have two other terms to describe thin body types, which are very impolite. And these terms are bony, yes, bony, and scrawny. So if I say someone is bony, it means they are so thin that you can see their bones in their body. And typically this is used as an insult. I wouldn't call people bony unless that's your intention, to insult them. And then we have the term scrawny, and this describes someone who is very thin, but it also implies that they are very weak as well. Next, we have some terms to describe larger body types. And also keep in mind, there aren't too many terms that we can use to describe a larger body type that are seen as polite. There are a few that are neutral that I will teach you, and then there are some that are very impolite that I will also go over. A sort of neutral term that we use to describe both larger men and women is to say that they are heavier or heavy set. We often also use this term stocky to talk about people who are large but also short in height. You can call that person stocky. Then we have the term full-figured. This term is used to describe women who are a bit larger. but it's a politer way of calling a woman larger. Just say she is full-figured. A term that we use to describe larger men is husky. He's a little husky, meaning he's a little bit bigger than the average man. A term that we use to describe people who are very overweight to the point that it can negatively affect their health is to say that that person is obese. Next, we have 3 terms that I wouldn't recommend calling someone. They are a bit impolite. The first one is very impolite, and it's the term fat. And I'm sure you've heard this term. Don't use it to talk about anybody who is larger. It's just rude. And then we have the terms chunky or chubby. And these words describe people who are just a little bit overweight, just a little bit larger than the average person. Some people might not take too much offense to them, but I would try to avoid these terms if you are trying to be polite. Similar to full-figured, we have this term plus-sized, and you'll often see this term on clothing. It's just a term that we use to describe people who are a little bit larger than the average person, plus-sized. So now we're going to describe athletic body types, and the first 2 terms are fit and in shape. And if you are fit or in shape, you probably look very healthy and strong. You might exercise, you might have a little muscle definition, and you just take care of your body. And then we have this term toned, and this describes the way that the muscles look against the body. Your muscles make your skin look very firm. You also look very strong if you are toned. Next, we have the word lean, and this describes a person with very, very little body fat on them. So you can be very big and muscular and lean, right? Or you can be small and lean. It just depends on how much fat you have on your body. Then we have these terms jacked, which is slang, and buff. And these words are used to describe men in a complimentary way. It just means they are very, very muscular and big. And then we have this term swole. And we also use this just to describe men, and it can also be used in a complimentary way. And this describes a man who is muscular, but also just large. Now we're going to discuss curvy body types. And our first word to describe curvy body types is curvaceous. And this is pretty much just a synonym for curvy. Your body has a nice curve to it. Next we have this word voluptuous. Voluptuous. I like saying this word. It describes a woman who is curvy, but she also has large breasts and wide hips. She's very voluptuous. We also use the term thick, yes, to describe women who are curvy but have a large bum and wide hips. Another phrase we use to describe curvy women is to say that they are hourglass. So this is an hourglass. So if you are shaped like this, you have an hourglass figure, right? You have larger breasts, a larger bum, and wide hips. Hourglass. Next we have a few terms to describe height. And the first one is petite. Petite. It comes from French. You often see this on clothing, and it's a word we use to describe women who are short and very small. Petite. And then we have a term puny. Puny. This is not a very polite term to call someone puny, but this describes someone who is small but also very weak. And then we have a word to describe a tall person, and it is lanky. But a person who is lanky is not just tall, they are tall and skinny. Also, if you're lanky, you're kind of awkward. It kind of looks like you don't know how to use your limbs very well. So think of a baby giraffe just learning how to walk. It's very lanky. Next, we're going to talk about a few facial features. And our first facial feature is freckles. So freckles are those small brown dots that usually are more visible on light skin. Next we have dimples. They can appear here on your cheeks usually, and that's a little curved dent in the skin. Dimples. A beard is the hair that appears on the chin, and if you have a beard, you could be called bearded. If you don't have a beard, we could call you clean cut or clean shaven, meaning you shave your beard or the hair on your face. Next we have a mustache. A mustache is the hair that grows above the lip. And then we have a mole. A mole is a small brown dot on the skin. Sometimes it can come out a little bit. Then we have a goatee. It's like a beard, but it's a little skinny, pointed beard. Then we have a cleft chin. If you have a cleft chin, you have a dent that goes inward in the middle of your chin. And next we have a widow's peak. That's when your hairline kind of comes to a point. A receding hairline, and that usually happens to men when they get a little bit older. Their hairline starts to move back a little bit or recede. Next we have full lips. If you have full lips, they are very plump and big. They are full. If you found this video useful, please give me a like. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like more English lessons. And until next time, English learners.